Let's go!
We know an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but who gets the credit? Families like Raji's and Vernon BC. Growing up on an orchard farm, Raji's simple upbringing fostered more than she could ever dream. Her imagination. Her studies would catapult her across the country from the mountains of BC to the skyscrapers of Toronto. Immensely talented, she soon found herself rubbing shoulders with the elite and the influential, but Raji knew there was more to life. Now as a creative director and journalist, working with the likes of Mongrel Media and the Huffington Post, Raji is shaping multiple industries through the initiatives that push creative growth, teaching them the true power behind change, to simply care. Ladies and gentlemen, Raji Aujla.
Straight out of the T-Dot.
That's what it is.
Live from the 6 boroughs.
Don't go nowhere.
For sure. Welcome to Standing in the 6 with your host, Constantine, and guest host, Muhammad Leela.
It's so nice being on this side of the table.
Amazing.
It's an honor.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm extremely thrilled to have Muhammad back in the house right now. I mean, we actually said this last week because Mike's been gone for 2 weeks now, but we always say it's like the next, whenever a new guest comes in, we level up, right? So we got Muhammad Leela in the house.
When you say level up, I think of when I was a kid playing like Super Nintendo and like Mario, and like he hits this bonus and it's like level up. Now he can like go to the next level. So
well, Muhammad, you got perfect view right behind me. See, look at that poster behind me right now. This is a
poster.
Yeah. So a lot of our guys have been kind of had mixed feelings about that poster. More or less, they don't think it fits the style of The Office, but
no, man, I think it's all right. I think it's authentic.
It is.
It's authentic.
I mean, what do they know? They're not creative people. I mean, what could we do?
How many quarters did I put into a machine like that growing up, right?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And you know, if Street Fighter was giving me those messages, I might have actually hustled and had focus instead of just trying to beat M. Bison every day.
I know, it's crazy. Well, look, I'm really happy you're here again, like I said, and I want to throw something out because this is something that's actually been sitting on my mind this whole entire week. And
here it comes.
Yeah, it's
first question in. There's Constantine, man. I've been here for like 30 seconds.
I know.
You're all getting heavy. All right.
But it's something that I want to ask your opinion.
Yeah, sure. What's up?
In your line of work, in everything that you've done, and just knowing how people are to this day, how much would you agree with the statement that a lot of people feel they're a legend in their own mind, meaning as in that they feel that what they're doing in either their work style or who they are as individuals is far off how other people might perceive it?
I think that's everybody.
Okay.
For good or bad, I think that's everybody, because like I think social media did that to us.
Okay.
Right, and specifically Instagram did that to us, and as soon as our phones started being able to capture these really vivid images, like the world changed, our lives changed, right? So now sometimes when you look at people on social media, I go through this all the time, right? I've really cut down, for example, on my Facebook. Like I'll use it to kind of keep track of people, but I don't post stuff anymore because the stuff that I see posted, I don't know if it's real.
Right.
And what I mean by real is like I don't think they faked the image.
Right.
I just don't know like if that person is happy every single moment of the day because that's all that I see.
Yeah.
And if they're around like really attractive people every moment of the day because that's all that you see.
Right.
And I don't think it is. So I think just people in their minds, we create this personality.
Right.
That we present as ourselves. But I don't think it is, right? So okay. I think some people in their minds, they're like, yeah, that's who I am. I'm going on these crazy vacations. I'm Instagramming all these crazy meals that I'm eating, right? But come on, man. When they go home, they're probably having craft dinner.
Yeah.
But that's real.
Right.
So I just think people, I think there's a, how do you put it? I think there's a distance between what we project of ourselves and as part of that, what we think of ourselves in our minds and what we really are.
I think 100%, but also in addition to that, so that's the style of living. What about to people in their grind, in their work ethic? I mean, I'll give you an example. There's some people that feel that they're giving it their all, right?
Yeah.
And that because of that, they're this individual. And when they can't move into a certain element, it's like, man, I don't get it. I'm giving it my all. Like sometimes, like I say, that statement of being a legend in your own mind is that sometimes there's a filter that blocks what really is happening opposed to what you think you're doing.
Yeah. I see what you're getting at, right? And I think that's what separates sort of successful people in the grind.
Right.
Like they say that 1 out of every 10 startups. So anybody who starts a new company or organization or something, only 1 out of every 10 is going to be around 5 years later.
Right.
But what is that 1 out of 10? What does that 1 person out of 10 have?
Right.
It's that like they're hustling and they're grinding, they're being told no all the time.
Right.
Right. And you hit these barriers and it's like, okay, well, you know, say you want to be a singer.
Right.
Right. And you're like, man, I did all this research and people like this and I just opened for this, you know, this act or whatever. And it's all about just the perseverance, man.
No, for sure.
Perseverance and being able to adjust. And in that sense, what you're talking about, I don't think that's a bad thing to be a legend in your mind.
Right.
I think that can actually be a positive thing, right?
Right.
I'm sure you've had points in your life where you're like, look, man, 5 years ago, if somebody was like, you'd be hosting a show where you're podcasting.
Right.
You might be like, I don't know, what would you have said? Like,
you know, honestly, that's a good question. To me, I just know there's a formula that I have internally that I can replicate that in whatever I do.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So for me, if I'm going to, let's say, if I want to get into picking up a second, or actually I already have a second language, but if I want to pick up a third language and I want to truly do that, the formula that I have in place, I'll be fluent in that language.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, you know, I saw this old clip of Elon Musk.
Okay.
I think he was 25 or something. He was really young, and he was getting a delivery of like a McLaren sports car.
Okay.
And it was coming off the truck, and they were loading it down, and he's this young kid wearing a suit that's way too big for him.
Okay.
And he's sitting there, and he's talking, and like basically he had just sold his first company for $400 million.
Okay.
In his 20s.
Wow.
Right? And so and then so it's like, okay, he was what we would classify, quote, a nerd, right? He knew software and he hit the right wave. And then they were like, okay, so what's next? And he goes, okay, let me show you. And he stands in front of an ATM machine. And he goes, you see this ATM machine where you need to take out money and you put money in? He goes, we're going to take the ATM machine and we're going to put it on the internet. And that was PayPal.
Wow.
Right? So when you talked about how you've got this formula that you could do this and then you could pivot it and you could do this, I feel like some of the most successful people in the world, they've just figured out, or they're constantly kind of improving on I've grown this thing, I can apply those principles to something else and make that successful also.
Right.
And then PayPal sold for way more.
Man, I'm telling you.
You got it, man. Look, if you have that gift, man, you're one of the luckiest people in the world. If you could just touch something, it's like the Midas touch, right? Right. You just touch it and bang.
Well, I'm gonna take that prophetic word right now that you put into place, because I actually, it's funny. There's been some people to this point that have said what you're doing right now is kind of like a waste, or are you sure you want to be going down this direction? And to me, I can tell you this right now, and I mean, I'm gonna take those prophetic words and I'm gonna claim them, and I'm gonna say that this show is going to be a staple, essentially, into what we're doing.
Can I say something? Can I give you a bit of encouragement?
Yeah, for sure, man.
So, you know my career. I've traveled around the world. Like, when I would report live, CNN has an audience of like 400 million people. It's not a small amount, right? Even CBC, like, you know, you're seen across Canada.
Right.
I'm in an industry where there's a lot of people who aren't real, right? I'm in an industry where people will spend 2 hours in makeup. Right? Like, that's normal. Yeah. Right? 2 to 3 hours. And that's fine. That's not a judgment. But there's so much in this industry that's not real. And what you're doing here is so real that, like, I believe in it.
That's awesome, man.
Right? Like, I said this last time I came in. You called me up and like, hey, can you fill in? Can you jump in? And I was like, I didn't even hesitate. Wow. There was no, oh, well, what's in it for me?
Right.
No, I think you guys are onto something, man. Like, don't just let those people say what they want.
Yeah.
You guys are so real and so authentic, and you're standing up.
Right.
You know, I just saw the title, right? Standing in the Six. So I'm standing in for standing in the Six, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, I love it, man.
Awesome.
And this is awesome. I'm happy to be here. Let's do this.
That's great. Well, today we have a really, really cool guest. I know her well, Raji Aujla, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing her name, but we're gonna find out the proper name.
All right.
Very shortly. But Raji
I'm South Asian, and I don't want to take a chance and mispronounce that name either.
Well, she's also falls in line with being a creative director and also having elements of just brilliance with her writing flares and her personality. And I think it'd be great to kind of dive in and find a little bit more about her.
Yeah, totally. Let's do it.
I mean, let's bring her in.
All right.
Awesome.
Let's go!
Well, good morning, everyone. Today is a very special day, as always. We have a close friend and also someone that we've done work with before in the past. And that is Raji. Oh, my God, man.
Here it comes.
Aujla.
Here it comes.
You got it.
Got it? Oh,
You got it.
Wicked.
Well done. Well done.
My last name is spelled with an I, so it should be said Yuanu, but because of that, nobody ever gets that right. It's always everything in the mix. So I always want to pay special attention to the names.
I never pronounce your last name.
Never?
Never. It's
Good.
not even saved in my phone.
Really? Okay, so it's Constantine.
I couldn't even tell you what your last name is if you'd asked me. I mean, he's just Constantine in my head.
You're like Cher.
Yeah.
You don't need a last name.
There you go. Raji, I've known you for some time right now, and we first met, I believe it was Milka that introduced us.
Yes.
And,
2012.
That's right. And that was when we were brought into the Mongrel media element during the film festival. However, when I was doing a little bit of I love to do more background reading, just, a little going deep. You were actually, I think where we very first may have met without really, is the Spoke Club.
Yep.
Because that's where you kind of started a little bit of your journey.
I remember the red ties at Spoke Club.
Really?
I do. I was like 26, and I was the curator of the whole club. So I was doing all the programming, all the art, everything.
Yeah.
And my first thing was TIFF. And I just remember being like, what?
Is this when it was Nikki Beach?
It was Nikki Beach.
Okay, I remember
So
that.
your first thing was TIFF.
My big project was TIFF.
Wow.
And I'd
That's
never
the
even
deep
been.
end.
Oh, yeah, Lion's Den. Pierre Jutra. Yeah, you're
That's
good.
right.
Go.
Yeah. Wow.
Even
Okay.
in the interview, he was like, I kept saying, I didn't even know it was an interview that they were interviewing me. I used to work as a writer, and then I was working for a paper in India, and so I was getting paid in rupees. And then I started
Wow.
working back in Toronto for that newspaper, so I was working at Splendido as a waiter, just to be able to afford, food and rent and water and things.
That's important.
I thought so. And then Pierre called me into his office, and I didn't know it was like a full-on interview. And I go, "Oh no, you don't want to hire me." It's like, I don't know anything. I don't know anybody in Toronto. I was like a nerd. And he's like, "No, you're exactly what we're looking for." And I was like, "The first film I watched in a movie theater was Lord of the Rings 2. Are you sure you still want me?" And he's like, "First of all, what? And second, yes."
Stop. That's your first film in the theater?
It was the first film.
That was a great movie, by the way.
It was, I mean...
But you started off at 2.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was a one. I didn't know
Wow.
anything. Like, we were raised under, like, the smallest little... I don't know, it was a small town. So I feel like I didn't really know much.
I want to ask you that, because when I was looking at your background, there's one thing that just stood out to me. You grew up on an apple orchard.
Yeah.
What's that like, growing up on an apple orchard?
I'm having vivid memories right now, like just flash by. It was, you know what? During the time, it sucked. Because,
Really?
Yeah. I mean, at that time, you want to just play and do things like normal people, like go to the beach.
Sure.
But we would have our whole year based on the calendar, based on the orchard. So it's like we would be working in the morning, go to school, and then come back home, go pick apples for hours, change the irrigation pipes, and then go home, play ball.
Where was this? Where was home?
Vernon in the Okanagan Valley.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
right between Calgary and Vancouver. We're in the middle.
So what happens now when you drive past or you see an apple orchard?
It's funny when people are like, "Hey man, it's gonna be a beautiful weekend. Let's go pick apples in Niagara Falls." And I was like, "Yeah, y'all have fun, man." But no, now it's more nostalgic. Now it's a lot more. I feel like I've closed that loop of like it being work, and now I just look at it as like, what a privileged childhood, to be so close to land in such a meaningful way. Like we picked apples, and that's just the way to articulate that. What we really did was we harvested land. That was our food. We fed people. Like I don't know. There's like a bigger thing that I feel a lot more appreciative of now. I miss it.
Well, look, I mean, and then you just ended up in the city, right? I mean, I want to go back. How did you end up from Vernon to Toronto? Because, I mean, a lot of times when you hear these stories where people like started in these little small areas and then moved out. It was a big leap, right? How did you make that transition?
I feel I shouldn't have, honestly. Now,
Really?
yeah, it was way too much of a leap. Like, the first movie I watched at theater is Lord of the Rings 2. Like, that was like such a big deal for me coming into this big city. The first thing I remember was landing at nighttime in January. So I moved in January, and I was just like, where are the mountains? Like, it was so flat. It didn't even make sense to me. And then
Wow.
I just cried. I felt like I made a huge mistake. But what compelled me to move here was school. I had a scholarship, so I wanted to go to U of T. And then my cousin, because I always wanted to be a journalist, and so my cousin had a TV show, and I was like, you know what? I'll move there, and I can work with him. What I didn't realize was like the trauma of like leaving a small little nest and moving into like a concrete jungle.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever be comfortable with Toronto. It'll never really feel like home.
Was that the first
Yeah.
time you'd seen Toronto when you flew in?
I saw it like when I was younger, so I didn't realize how big it was. In fact, when I drove down and saw the CN Tower, I was like, what the heck is that?
There's our mountain.
Yeah. Like, even on an architectural level, I was like, what am I looking at? Like, what is that thing? I didn't know cities had those little, my sisters and I call massive pieces. We never understood why they were there. But I
Wow.
just remember seeing like Toronto and being like, what am I doing here? I felt like an outcast from day one.
Really? But the reason why you came over obviously was schooling, right? And then something else gravitatively pulled you here because you've really established yourself here. I mean, obviously, you've told me the work you've done also back home, but you've really kind of created a name for yourself here, and that's kind of amazing because think about it: to go to a foreign area and establish yourself and build something is always more difficult than doing it in your own home turf.
You know what? It's my mom's fault. Like, moments before, so we're raised as Punjabi Sikh women, and you know it's a pretty conservative culture, or like conservative to women. I guess
Okay.
it's pretty patriarchal. The culture.
Yes.
The religion, on the other hand, is very liberating. It's very free, and I remember my mom sat me down the night before I moved here. I was praying all evening, and most of the night I think I just prayed a lot. And the next morning, we went to the temple, like the Vernon Sikh temple, and my mom was like, okay, now Raji, when you make decisions in Toronto, just imagine I'm standing right beside you. And that scarred me. I was like, imagine that little tidbit of information.
Right.
And she just knew. She was like, yeah, so I never really deviated and done the things that I kind of wish I did. You know, like go out, get messed up, do stupid things.
Yeah.
Just because I constantly felt her presence around me.
So it worked.
Yeah. She nailed it. Yeah. She should get an award. Or in fact, parents, this is what you do.
Yes.
Your children are going to move out. Tell them that you're sitting right beside them.
What's interesting about that, though, is that you talked about how you're from what you would say is a patriarchal culture, but they were okay with you coming out here on your own.
They were only okay if I could fund it myself. So otherwise, I would have probably still been in Vernon. They told me at a young age, they're like, if you want a life outside of like kind of this, you have to. We were pretty poor as well. Like our family was below they were kind of at the poverty line. You know, my parents moved here. They went to Vernon. They had 4 kids in 4 years.
Wow.
They didn't speak the language. So I felt they wanted a lot for us, but
Right.
they also understood what they can and cannot do. And so for me, it was like, if you want to go and get educated, you better get scholarships. So then I'm like, how do you get scholarships? And I just researched the whole thing and got
you are.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was your experience in the schooling system here doing that? I mean, to kind of get you to that passion piece.
No, I hated it. I
Really?
hate school. Yeah.
Is it because of the theory element of it, or because it just wasn't? Look, there's this notion that when you go to school, you're going to be taught something that kind of or may not really apply to what you actually end up doing in that field. Did you kind of get that feel from that?
Yeah, it's kind of like they just throw you in. I always felt like a number. I'm like, I don't know if I mean, I had some great professors and all of that, but in general, I feel, I say to my friends, they're like, what do you think is success? And often for me, it's like success is closing the loop in your life. It's when you are a child and you become an adult, but then when as an adult, you're able to become a child again. Because you realize that life is tough, you realize all these things, but you're able to go back into this innocent, almost kind of human curiosity way of living. And
Right.
and for me, school didn't really achieve that. I felt like I was learning things which were great, but I don't think that they teach children, because I feel like I was a child then, how to be an independent thinker. It's often like referring to other people, other philosophers. I love school, don't get me wrong. I learned so much and I love that experience. But I think sometimes we need to check in the school systems and be like, are we teaching kids the best way? Is this like what we want to teach them? And I think that a curriculum change or a review should be, I don't know.
If you were, I mean, knowing what you know now and all the experiences that you've had in life, the ups and the downs, if you were in charge of a class of students, what would you teach them?
I honestly, I want to go into teaching soon. It's on my goal path. I would love to teach children design thinking, just how to look at, and which is the school of thought, but how to become analytical thinkers so they can make decisions designing their life on their own accord with a lot of intention and meaning. I feel like that course in itself would help people even design their curriculum. Which classes to take, which classes not to take, how to lead up to something that makes sense, rather than these are all the courses you should take and make some sense out of it for yourself.
Right.
So design thinking has been crucial, not only to how I learn and interface in my personal relationships, but also how I conduct business. So that's probably what I would teach them.
Well, one of your title is Raji, is a creative director.
Yeah.
Okay, and I know. And speaking with you, you work on a lot of things. Like your feelers are everywhere, right? Tell me a little bit about that, how you got to that point. Because, I mean, obviously, I know you still are into the journalistic approach of things, right? Which we're going to get into. But with what you're doing in the creative element of things, how did that come into turn? Because to me, when I'm hearing, the little I'm hearing from you right now is that there's definitely creative elements oozing out of you.
Yeah, definitely. I think storytelling is like what I love to do, and I did for a good portion of my life. But I think I worked with so many agencies, I worked with so many communications firms and whatever else, and somehow that flipped around at some point, and then I became an agency in myself. And what really drives me is language and representation and how you tell stories in an authentic way. And stories could be anything. It could be actually a story, written form, or a video or something. But also, you walk into the doors of Mongrel Media's Campbell House takeover, and how you want people to feel, what you're trying to tell them. So I really look at, like, the end user. So in this case, like, say a client walking through the doors of a big museum, and I try to design a story catered almost exclusively to them. Not so much about me or Mongrel. I mean, I look into everybody's, mandates and stuff like that.
Right.
But for me, it's always on that human approach. What do people need? How do we bring them together and tell a story or a shared experience? How do we express ourselves? Like, just those real questions.
Here's a sort of fundamental question for you, and I think you have the perfect energy and background for this. What makes a good story?
Honestly, I find stories just in general fascinating, but I love those stories that you could tell has like a real meaningful emotion to it, like a real human story. Like recently, I was talking to a friend of mine, and when you start digging deeper, even with clients, and you start digging deeper and you just start asking them questions like, why do you want to start a pub? And they're like, oh, because pubs are amazing and I love them, or whatever. You're just like, yeah, but why? And you just keep asking the why. This is a true story. This client was like, oh, well, my eldest brother, he died, and his whole dream was to have a pub because he loved bringing people together, and he loved going to pubs and sharing stories and whatever. That little bit of just knowing that there's an elder brother that loved doing this in London that I'll never meet because he's passed, it made me so happy. And I was like, okay, I get on an empathetic level why you want to open this pub. Let's do this, and let's freaking blow this up. So any story excites me as long as there's like a real human element to it. My mind goes crazy.
I love what you said right now, and there's something that I'm just targeting right now, and it's the why. Okay, we actually talked about this. I don't know if you remember briefly at the Soho House. I actually recommended you read a book by Simon Sinek.
I didn't read it, but I remember that.
Start with Why.
Yes.
Okay? Yeah, start with why. This have you heard of that before?
I think you recommended it to me at some
Yeah,
point
I
too.
did.
Yeah.
What's so powerful about this book, and it just tells you over and over and over again, is many entities, businesses, people, they know what they're doing, they know how to do it, but they don't know why they're doing it. So you could be going through this grind every single day in life, and you're unhappy, or you can't fulfill your purpose because you don't know why you're doing it. And when you get to that discovery, that's when it all opens up and changes, right? So the fact that you can, I mean, you're doing it. You did that example is an example of bringing someone to their why. Because once you get there, that's when the magic starts. To me, that's an incredible thing to do. And to me, it kind of resets you. I actually went to New York last March for this conference after I read the book.
Right.
And I actually had to, one of your things, that they go through this whole mix, discover what your why is. And then once you found it, try to put it into words. And then it's by your words that will continue to remind you. So when I formed my why, it was things that I'm doing, things that I've done, and things that I want to do. So the words that came to me was to to help people find, seize. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting my why right now. Oh my!
What were some of the
goodness.
key words that were coming up?
Yeah, help people see and seize opportunities. I can't believe I forgot that. It's your eyes, Raji. I got lost in your eyes. To help people see and seize opportunities.
And be a poet.
Yeah, exactly. Like to live outside the box.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is what I do, and that's what embodies everything that I do on a daily basis. Right? Is to kind of help create these opportunities and help people get there. So the fact that you're able to do something like that, that's huge, right? And that kind of speaks to who you as an individual as well.
And I have to say, with what you do that so well. And I think the reason why this work professional relationship turned into one that of just a lot of, personal respect and admiration is because while you're doing this and allowing people to not only understand their opportunities, but take them,
Right.
You create such a safe space for that. You know what I mean?
No, I
Like
appreciate
when
that.
we talk about things and Donish and I are talking to you, like it's always such a comfortable, safe, open, transparent conversation. I think that you yourself do that really well.
I think since we're all jumping on the bandwagon here, I think Constantine has a gift where there's some people in your life, and everybody out there watching and listening has somebody in their life like this, where when you're with them, they make you feel like you're the most important person in the room. Right? And those are the relationships that you cherish because you feel like they're being true to themselves, but they're being true to you also, right? And they're just, it's like you said, I like that word you use, where it's a safe space, right? There are very few people, unfortunately, and this might not be for everybody, but I think some people have few people in their lives where they can feel 100% safe around to make mistakes or to say the dumbest thing they could think of. But you have that vibe.
That's cool. I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, for us, that's me. You know what I mean? And to me, I like the fact that it can be perceived like that. Let me ask you a question. The stuff that you do right now as a creative director, that would you say that's a stressful job? I mean, because I'm trying to right now go back into glimpses of when you're in your zone and there's like 100 things that are just happening at the same time that you basically are, have involvement with. And do you go through those times where you're like, man, what am I going to do to get through this? And how do I deal with it individually? Because dealing with stress when you're getting on those scales, man, it's an art in itself.
Oddly, that doesn't stress me out.
Really?
Work doesn't. I mean, there's stressful moments.
Yeah.
But there are moments of stress but it doesn't. It just doesn't resonate. So I feel like pretty calm even in stressful scenarios, and I feel like you're just able to deal. But I think what really does stress me out is when my values aren't aligned with the values of a client, and then suddenly you're having to reconcile and negotiate things in your mind, and that stresses me out like crazy. So when I'm like doing something for a client, which no longer happens now, like I'm pretty, my partner and I are really picky on who we'd like to work with, because that kind of stress, it's not worth it. And I don't think it'll ever be worth it.
So what do you do when you're in that situation where you suddenly realize, they want something different than what we want? Because that's a life issue.
I think I fight first. So there's like a period of, and this is again goes back to my design thinking faculty in my mind, but usually it starts with empathy and just trying to understand where they're coming from. Is there somewhere good? Is there something that I can help open up, or so you try to approach it from that lens, and then you start defining it, and you're like, wait, you're saying this, but you're doing this, which means you're excluding this, and that doesn't really make sense to the first
right.
proposition there. And then I fight. I literally would just like make concessions in my mind, and it'll just be like, okay, this isn't worth the fight. Let's just do this. And then you
Right.
start doing things that you're not wanting to do. And then it starts interfering with your reputation maybe. And, so many things start happening. And all the while you're just really trying to do good. But an institution might be stopping that. And they might want to do good as well, but they're having a hard time defining what that looks like, or making an inclusive space that allows for ideas to be challenged or whatever else. They don't Constantine the space. They don't create that.
Right.
And then a moment later, you're just like, oh my God, I am burnt out. I am depressed. I need to see help. I can't get out of bed.
Right.
And that vicious cycle has happened in my life twice now.
Wow.
And so at this point, I'm like, I say to my partner often, I'm like, I'm fragile. I will say yes to things that I know I have my body can handle.
Yes.
And, I guess the biggest learning is knowing when to walk away. And you're like, okay, I've put in my all. It's not worth it anymore.
But
like,
you
I wish
create your
you well.
control. You create your control, right? You control
Now I
that.
can.
Yes.
But I think that took a lot of beating to get to this point where I'm like, not worth it.
Life is so short. The fact that you can get there and maintain that's incredible. Because at the end of the day, I look, for myself, I find myself, I'm in those positions where a lot of times I'm thinking, oh my goodness, man, like sometimes I don't even get to see my family for like literally hours on end, and I feel guilty afterwards, right? But at the end of the day, the question poses, what if something happens medically to me, health-wise, and I'm out? Then what is it worth, really? What is it worth? And to me, to kind of be in tune with that very quickly is a very positive thing. The other thing is, you mentioned something about you're at a point right now where you don't want to fight with you want to be on that creative level, right? There's another saying by Simon Sinek that says, don't do business with people that want what you have. Do people with business that believe what you believe, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're in tune with that, it just makes it, you're just choosing to work with people where greatness can come from.
Oh, for sure. We're a creative agency. We don't even have a logo. We don't have a website. We really don't. In fact, I don't even think my LinkedIn's updated.
Well, so then if I was going to ask you the question, how do we find you then, is we just have to...
Yeah, it's all been word of mouth.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty in
That's
that
awesome.
right now is, it's so humbling, but the beauty in that is that everybody that's referring you, they're like-minded, because you only really refer someone if you really believe in it. And
Absolutely.
My partner Darshan was like, somebody was asking for a website to see things, because obviously in a creative agency, they want to see what you can make and do. And so I was like, oh man, there's no way I'm going to get a website hammered out overnight. So I created a PDF, like just 12 pages of our thinking, of our methodology, of approach. And the last one was, the last page was called Brain Trust. And it consisted of all the names of people that I contract out to, that I work with, that are, my counsel, I guess. And around it, I designed a thing that said that our brain trust all believes in the same thing we do. And the tenets were love, integrity, and art, kind of bringing people together. So love has become like, not Hallmark love, but love really, like the love of what you do, the love of spreading goodness, the love of just creating community and space for people to come together, irrespective of their backgrounds. That's really that's our work.
Right.
And as an agency, I feel we can do that. Usually, it'd be a strategic firm or something like that, a corporation. But I think the reason why an agency should serve in that space is because they're often thinking about that end user, of that person online that's checking out your website. Like, we're always thinking about who we're designing for. And when you're thinking about that in designing communities, I think that could be a really powerful thing.
Let me ask you something. What keeps you awake at night?
So that's project 2. It's the things that do stress me out. That internal kind of the things that I say no to, I guess. I feel even though I guess I'm not as old as a lot of people, like when they say in my life I have learned, I don't think I have the right to say that yet, but but in my life, I have learned that there are certain things that, that don't allow people to build community in Canada. And, we can applaud ourselves on being diverse, can applaud ourselves for our multiculturalism and taking in refugees and things like that. But what's the point of doing all these things if we're not actively designing and building infrastructure to have these people, integrated into society, into community? And so when I look at that, I'm like, that's a problem. Like I don't have children, but my sister has twins that are my god kids. And I'm like, I don't want them to live in a life or to live in a Canada that is not inclusive, and we're veering so into these polar opposite ends as a society of like alt-right. It's not so much in politics. I'm not a political person. I have my opinions, but it's really as a society that we've polarized so much that there has to be a common ground that we design together that allows our children to really thrive.
You know what's so amazing?
Keeps me up.
You know what's so amazing about not just your answer, but just everything you've said so far? You still care. It's so obvious, right? The fact that you care about something greater than yourself. A lot of times, and I'm not just talking about agencies, right? Some agencies just want to make money.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's all about, okay, you give us this amount of money, we'll give you this amount of exposure, whatever. You still care. That's amazing.
It sucks as a businesswoman to care. Sometimes you're like, I find myself like, sometimes as you work on agency hours, I work, sometimes like Darsh and I will pump in like 10 times more than what we're charging people. But again, it's because of that love aspect. We're just like, you know what, we get you. Because of that empathy stage, when you're asking a lot of questions to your clients and getting to know them, suddenly their project becomes your own. Their stresses become your own. So yeah, the caring part, sometimes I wish I could do less of, but it's impossible.
But that's who you are.
It's who I am.
What's the secret though, right? Because life is hard. I mean, you're out there hustling, grinding. Everybody's out there trying to start their business or get their degree or do whatever they're trying to do. And the weight of life sometimes just feels really heavy. And the consequence of that is that it squeezes out the care that you had for the rest of the world.
Right.
Because you're like, I can care about people once I'm established. Once I hit this benchmark, I'll go back to caring. I'll be Mark Zuckerberg, make $1 billion, and then I'll donate some of it. But you have that. You have that through your journey. Where you haven't let go of that. How did that happen where you didn't let go of that?
It's since I was a kid. I don't think I've ever not been this way. That's why I sometimes say, like, I wish I wasn't this way. I probably would have been a lot wealthier or something. But I think the work that I do is in caring. So it's like I can't even take that away. It's not negotiable, I guess. And I also think, like, there was a distinct moment. You have kids. You have kids too. Your basketball picture and their life. And, I feel when I saw my twins in NICU, because they were premature. And so they were in that, that yellow light, the jaundice light, whatever they were, nurses were doing whatever they were doing. And I'm so calm. Like I don't think I've really yelled much. I could count it on my fingers, like how many times I've actually like got to a point where I was like, batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And we're in the hospital. I was the first one to see them after my sister and her husband. And the nurses were trying to get little veins and poking holes in them. And the twins were just crying. And I just screamed at them. I was like, be careful. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then I just started crying my eyes out. And my brother-in-law, I don't think he's ever seen me cry. I don't think many people have seen me cry. And he didn't know what to do with me, I don't think. And what I was realizing is when I was looking at them, that transaction happened when I was like, okay, the world is not mine. It's yours.
Right.
Everything I do now serves you and your world. And I don't think you change until you have seen something like that, which is like a new life come into earth, and you're like, oh, it's not mine anymore. It's totally yours. And yes, I will serve you and serve everyone that is new. So the Indigenous communities, and I don't know if it's one specific one in Canada or multiple, but I've heard it many times, the 7-generation principle, where you design your life and the decisions you make should impact positively 7 generations down. And I live that. Like, I think about that. I'm like, the decisions that we make now, it should serve 7 generations down the road. And so that caring, that love all comes from some really deep rooted spiritual connections to land and people. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hopefully that wasn't too deep.
No.
But I think everybody should live like this.
No, but
Because of climate change, you know.
for sure.
It makes me want to buy an apple orchard somewhere and just spend some time there.
No, listen, that's
You're welcome to go to my parents whenever. They love it. They love hosting people on the orchard and everything. So, and people actually take me up on that.
Really?
There's a curator in Toronto or in Montreal, Pip Day.
Yeah.
She's the executive director of SBC Gallery.
Okay.
Amazing work. And I was talking about BC and Okanagan Valley, and she literally that summer was like, "So were you for real? Like, can we stay with your parents?" I was like, "Yeah, totally." So she stayed at her cottage, and she brought her sister and her kids. So it's a thing. It's a beautiful space.
Come on, man. Just
Open invitation.
It's funny. The more and more we're saying the word apple orchard, I'm actually having an appetite for an apple right now.
Should take the show on the road.
Take the show on the road.
There you go.
Podcasting from Vernon.
Exactly. Let's tap into obviously the journalistic, side of you. I know we were talking in earlier conversations that you were kind of asked to kind of put together this element where you got to tap into some of the most influential people in Canada, or is it good people, I guess, or what would that be, that word?
It's a good question. I think I've had the privilege to meet and work with a lot of people that are, quite influential in Canada through their wealth, through their work. But I was always the youngest person at the table and the only often brown girl. And, just imagine that. I'm sitting at a table and there's these families or the patriarch of these massive families. And then there's this little girl from the Okanagan Valley.
Right.
I mean, talk about the imposter syndrome where you're like, what am I doing here?
Right.
What, But more importantly, I realized that I was silenced because a lot of the conversations that were being had, it alienated people.
Right.
And I don't think that was the intention. I'm not saying at all that these are bad people.
Yes.
But the conversations alienated people.
Okay.
I had the privilege of being in that space and learning that their opinion of millennials, as a millennial, it hurt me, but they're like, millennials are promiscuous. They don't do this. They care about themselves.
Well, there's a lot of bashing on millennials.
Yeah, and I was just sitting there. I'm like, and the fact they're they're not loyal. I'm like a Capricorn. I'm a loyalist. In my mind, I said a swear word, but I'm super loyal.
Right.
And I was quiet, and I didn't say anything. I look over at the CEO of the organization, and she just kind of did this and I was like, okay, I think that's the green light that I can speak. So, But that was the problem, is that I didn't know I can speak. So, what I said was, I was like, I'm like a millennial. I'm a girl. I'm South Asian, and I've had Apple products all my life. I learned how to type on a Macintosh, and I've had Apple products all my life. And I'm like, I go to Starbucks every day, perhaps twice a day, sometimes even 3 times a day.
Right.
And I was like, I'm loyal, and I don't need to qualify that.
Right.
But more importantly, the thing that you're missing is that if you're alienating all of us to think that we're this way, you have no idea what you're missing, the opportunities you're missing in capturing our attention, coming to us, talk to us. We don't need to come to you. Let's keep this, a fluid relationship, genuine. Talk to us about our things. Don't talk on behalf of us. So that really started going back into that journalist spirit inside me, where I was like, give me voice, give me agency, don't speak on our behalf. And then the more I started to feel this way, the more I started to see it in every which way. There's a massive summit that takes place every year. Nobody will know about it. It's invite only. And they were programming an Indigenous themed program for Canada 150.
Okay.
Little nuances though. They held it at Confederation Center in PEI, where the fathers sat down and did what they did.
Right.
And then so that you're on a creative direction brain. You're like, how do you tell that story?
Right.
Oh, we're going to host this summit, bringing people together.
Right.
And it's going to be all about indigeneity. Let's hold it at the Confederation Center. So that's one part where you're like, I'm not going to fight this one. I won't say anything. The one I did fight was when they didn't involve any Indigenous people on the committee that programmed the whole thing. They put an advisory council together, but they didn't give them a seat at the table. And that killed me. I was just like, what are we doing here? And that was the big awakening. And then I was like, I want to start writing stories. The world that I would like to see that my twins be raised in shouldn't be making these types of decisions. So I felt my only contribution is not to fight and disrupt inside. And I did a lot of disruptions while I was with that client. But it was more like, how do we get a national dialogue together? How do we get people telling their stories in a positive way? I don't mean to be sitting there bashing an institution, but really it's like, how do we say that if you want to include Indigenous voices at a conference, invite them to become programmers? You know, how do we, and I think Indigenous, you know, an Indigenous leader or person should be able to write that story and say, yo, this is how we want it to be done. Yeah. This is my humble opinion. It's up to you to interpret. So that's what now has Project B that I'm working on, is how do we tell those stories? Yeah. And who tells those stories?
For sure.
Where do we tell them? How do we tell everything? Like, I think about that. That keeps me up at night a lot. Yeah.
You know, you're someone that, to me, just by, finding even more about you today, that is someone that wants to make a change. Like, like one of my probing questions to you is going to be essentially is like, you know, what do you want your mark to be in the city? And you're saying that, you know, in different areas of your answers, right? Where it's like, to me, I don't see self in you at all. I see everything about you giving and really trying to help.
But that
make
could be
a change.
Problematic too, though. Like I go to heavy therapy,
yeah,
as most people do. Most empathetic
absolutely.
leaders, they're, you know, but it's not. I don't even know if I care about like legacy. Like, you know how often people plan their legacies out, and
yes.
My friend and I went up to a cottage last weekend, and when we did this design thinking exercise that I do with people now, and we're asking each other really meaningful questions, and she goes, okay, this is my sentence, this is what I think your purpose is, and it's centered around female empowerment, kind of more inclusion. Children is my big weakness, and by weakness I should even say strength.
Okay.
That's what I work towards, is building a better world for children. She thought that my thing was about empowering children and women, which it is, but that's actually the vehicle for a larger purpose, which I would love for systemic change. Like, and I know that's like a massive tackling, like, you know, but really it should be systemic change. It should be like, it doesn't have to be like changing systems in general, but even if my influence in the smallest way is having one institution stop asking questions of how do I get you to come to me, or how do I sell you this product, and if they just make it more of an inclusive process, like if we're programming a summit on Indigenous arts in Canada, having Indigenous people on the board of that, if that could be my influence, I'll be a happy person.
It sounds like such a basic thing,
and that's the thing that sucks, is that it's so basic that sometimes I'm like, am I crazy? Like, am I sitting here like, what? You know, it's sometimes I'm just like, no, this isn't rocket science. We're overthinking it. Yeah. The moment you start thinking too much about a complex problem in a complex way by just, then I'm like, hey, this is not a natural process. Walk away from it, come back, and really, I don't know, problem solving, finding solutions, it should be easy, I think.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
It's funny when you first came in here and we were talking about how Mohammed and his encounter with the Orlando Magic visiting the city.
I love this city. Like,
I was so torn. So just people don't know the story. So I got in a bit early. I went to Starbucks, grabbed a coffee. We're in a part of Toronto called Yorkville, and it didn't clue in because around TIFF you expect to see people, and I'm just having my coffee and these guys from the Orlando Magic walk in, and not just the players but like trainers and stuff, and so I'm sitting there, I'm watching this guy, he's like 7'1" or something, walk in. And in, like, Toronto's a great city, but there aren't a lot of 7-footers walking around in Toronto. And he walks in, and I'm like, okay, so he must be a basketball player. And, they were all wearing, like, hoodies, right? Because they're from Orlando, and it's freezing here. It's snowing. And then DJ Augustin walks in, and he hit the game winner against the Raptors. So I was really torn because he just handed our home team the biggest loss they've had of the year, but I also just want to go and say hi. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, what's the overriding principle? Is it like, as much as I want to maybe just accidentally step on his foot or something? And I'm like, no, that's not how Canadians roll. Right. Let me just go and congratulate him.
Right.
So we did, and we struck up a conversation. But that's my Orlando Magic story for the day, is that apparently on my son's Google Hangouts, I'm trending now because I have a picture of me with DJ Augustine.
Well, it wasn't him that actually ended us. It was Kyle Lowry. Thanks, Kyle. But anyways,
shots fired.
Yeah. But
we love you, Kyle.
Yeah, but
we love you.
But fun fact, finding out that you told me you played ball.
Oh my God. My whole family, we're ballers.
Really?
Yeah, that was like, just every night, just shooting spar, like,
That's
like
wild.
having, My brother was in basketball. My sister, Sunny, you haven't met her yet.
No.
She was next level gangster. Like, people like in high school, but the guys' side, like the guys' teams would come and watch her because she was like a power forward and just relentless. And my whole dream for the longest time was like, I want to beat her in a one-on-one.
Really?
And I would say that, I'm like, that's if that comes true, I will be a happy person. I will die happy.
Right.
And I've never beat her. Till date.
Well, look, one of the things about, my daughter plays ball. She's 13, and she loves it.
What position did she play?
She actually, right now it's funny because they don't really do positions. They just kind of play whatever. She's not a guard. She kind of more plays the power forward position.
She tall like you?
She's tall. She's tall.
Nice.
She's 5'11", and she's 13, which is
wow.
Yeah. So she,
that's like Shaq level. Like that's wow, man.
So she loves the game. However, one of the things that we talk about, which I'm going to segue into this, is that and my son as well, getting into a mental toughness, right? Stimulating your mind to overcome elements of things. And it's funny because even though I just picked on Kyle, imagine the whole city right now is like literally just saying, well, like you didn't score any points or this and that. How you have to kind of come back tomorrow now and literally start, reprogramming your mind to perform, right? So I'm going to ask you right now, mental toughness, okay?
Wow.
How does that, how does that play into what you're doing? Because again, the mind literally leads everything, right?
I can't say that like I'm at a point where I feel I've achieved such strength. I think my resilience is pretty dope. I've been working on it. It's good. It's at a place of just having peace in my mind. But I think the agility you need in your mind, it needs to be exercised. It needs to be worked on, and that's what I'm working on often. I tell that. I was asked to speak at a Pathways for Education.
Okay.
So a whole bunch of youth from Regent Park, and that was what I kept trying to hammer in. And I could see that their eyes were glazing over. I don't think they understand what mental strength means. But that's something, again, in schools. I'm like, this is something people should teach. When I go home, or when I was working in a space where it was quite difficult, I would go home and my mind was racing so much, and I had no control over it. I started going to CBT, like cognitive behavior therapy, because I just needed to build relations in myself. Like, okay, that's a thought.
Right.
That's not who you are.
Right.
Close that thought. How do you do that? And then, I worked with a practitioner to learn how to tool myself to better to better calm my mind. But beyond that, I think mindfulness, conversations like this, like all these little things you could do to make your mind better, at more ease, defining the circles you want to exist in, saying no.
Right.
I think all of these things I'm practicing, and this is getting me stronger.
Let me take you into the moment, because you talked about imposter syndrome. That's probably something that's never fully going to go away.
Probably not.
You're going to be in a room full of people.
Wait until I own an orchard in Prince Edward County. That won't go away.
Right. And we'll come visit if you do own an orchard. But so you're in a meeting, and either you're pitching something or they've brought you in because they need your take on something. And you're in that moment, and everybody has different voices in their head. They have different personalities. How do you make sure that the personality that's strong and assertive and confident wins, and not the imposter syndrome that you feel? What do you do?
I think I'm like a really good actor or something, because people think I'm a lot more confident, and I'm pretty confident, but like when I come into a space, I do realize that my own presence can be very dominating, especially in meetings. So I
have to agree with you. When I
it
first
sucks.
met, but no,
because I'm such a nice person, and people often are like,
but I definitely sense it. Not intimidated. I would say like what you want. That's kind of like very confidence exudes.
Well,
Yeah.
in design thinking, another practice that we've incorporated as an agency, this comes from me as a human, is reflective listening. So often it's like, my whole thing is not ego driven at all. Like my idea is the best idea. And oftentimes it's not, you know. So it's about like having all the different stakeholders on a table, everybody airing out what they want, asking questions to let them dig deeper and getting out what they want. And then summarizing it in a way that you know, because I think you almost as a design thinker, you're kind of thinking ahead often.
Right.
And as an empath, you are able to understand what people's personal, like your personalities are.
Right.
So it's often like just getting them to speak it out and then summarizing it and then saying it back. Like, this is what I'm understanding from you guys. And then people responding to that. So you always know you're on the same page as them.
Right.
And then introducing ideas where you see that an opportunity exists. So I think that's been like the largest focus, is actually just not speaking at all, and letting other people to speak, and then
That's powerful.
and then responding. Yeah. So that's something I'm practicing. Like, I can't say, sometimes I'm like, man, that's a horrible idea. Like, no,
Right, right.
no, absolutely not. But then I realize, okay, I can't, you know, I'm just going to like let you talk it out.
Yeah.
And often I feel when you ask the right questions, they'll talk it out and see the problems that exist in what they're saying.
Right.
And they're like, oh, wait, I guess that doesn't make sense. And you're like, yeah, I think you're right. And, you know, and just let them talk it out themselves. So
No, that's good.
that's something I'm practicing right now. Yeah.
But one of the things that I actually read an article. It's an old one, not too old, but people were asking you questions, and they asked you a question and said, what advice can you give to other women starting out in your field? Okay. Do you remember that? It was for something called She Does the City.
Yeah, I remember it was for She Does the City.
Okay, but you said something. You said a sense of self,
Mm-hmm.
and you said having strong work ethic.
Yeah.
And man, I loved the second element of. First of all, they're both great answers, but the second one, I harp on that one all the time.
Yeah.
We're always talking in our circles about the art of work ethic. Almost,
Yeah.
it's kind of lost. It's lost.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. But a lot of times people are thinking in their mind, we kind of talked about this before you got here, they're thinking of like, am I doing everything to my fullest potential? And some person can actually think he's doing that, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what work ethic, because I know you just mentioned that, but I want to flesh this out. What does that mean to you and what you're doing to get you where you are right now?
I think I'm so curious to know what you guys talked about. So let's do that. Like, I'd love to know your thoughts on it. But
Yeah.
for me, it goes back, and I don't mean to say everything starts from the apple orchard, but it kind of does. Like, you can't like procrastinate at all when you're
Right.
running an agricultural business.
Right.
If you don't pick the apples by a certain time and you hustle to get those apples picked, rain or shine, whatever, they're gonna fall. And that means that's money off the table. That means your family can't provide for the children. And so I feel growing up, we had such a strong work ethic. My grandpa raised me. My grandpa was like my paternal grandpa.
Yeah.
He was an army man. My dad's an army man. So we were on like a regimented schedule. That's what I mean. It wasn't so romantic growing up, this
Right.
notion of living on land.
Yes.
But I love it because I feel now it really resonates with the work that I do. It's like, okay, especially like every year I feel like my work is getting better. I mean, any entrepreneur, any business owner knows that every year it just gets better and better.
Right.
I think that work ethic comes in that, just like constant need to improve, constant learning, reading books,
Right.
trying to be the best you can be so you could best service the people you want to serve.
How many hours a
Yeah.
week do you think you work?
I
I know it's tough to put a number on it, but
don't know, like even when I'm in the mornings, like when my partner thinks I'm sleeping, like I'm thinking about my clients, I'm thinking about things. So I don't really know. I feel like the work that I do, I love so much. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really even feel like work. So
Yeah.
I'm not too sure.
It's almost
And
like you don't
some
shut
weeks
off.
are more. You don't.
Yeah.
Because even that Project B, that series that we're starting, that doesn't feel like work. That actually just feels like a
Right.
conversation like this.
Right.
Like, you know, it's supernatural. So I don't really know. And I should also say there are times when I'm just kind to myself. I'm like, I shall not do work today.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
Friday, I don't even think I opened my inbox. I was with
Yeah.
the twins.
I've always found that like I'll go through a phase, right, where it's like 2 or 3 weeks I'm just working nonstop. Or in my case, I'd be like on assignments where we're just flying out nonstop, like working, sleeping like 4 hours a day, and then at the end of 3 weeks, I just need to crash.
Yeah, but
I need like I need a week where it's like, okay,
recharge.
just recharge.
But that's the thing. Like, I feel like I'm cool. Like, I get to work, I get to do whatever I want, and really, it's more or less like a self-serving life. You both are parents, so I'm like, how do you guys do it? Like, I'm still cool. Like, I don't know how do you guys. How do you exist in your day-to-day while you're planning a future for children that are your own?
Yeah.
And while, there's like so many different variables in your life.
It's like having an apple orchard and not having any idea when those apples are going to be ready.
Yeah.
There's no schedule. It's just, all right, today is picking day. Tomorrow is, we got to do the irrigation. It's all just kind of...
It's 100% exactly like the apple orchard. Not it's very... I don't know, for me, the balance is trying to literally look, we had a guest on the show and he was talking about, which I thought was amazing. He goes, his newest thing right now is talking to companies, owners, business people of a thing called prime time. And the prime time is, and it's different for everybody, is that you're going to basically take an area of your day, whether it be 5 to 7, 8 to 9, and that time is going to be dedicated to either, your significant other, to maybe your friends, to your kids, whatever. But you're going to shut off everything else and give that prime time to that. And it's so simple, right? You hear it like, oh my goodness, that's fantastic. I mean, prime time to yourself could be like, if I want to go to the gym, I can't find the time to do it. Can it be 5 a.m? But you give yourself that prime time. And to me, I say that because in answer to, your question about how do you find out, I find that it's always a learning process where I'm aware. And I think the key is to be aware. I think once you've switched off the aware button, that's when it can get dangerous now, right? It's like, hey, do you realize you haven't talked to me in 1 week? I'm like, oh, shoot, I guess I haven't. I mean, that doesn't happen with me, but I'm just trying to say that to be aware, right? And I think that's the key. It's just being aware because being aware kind of fine-tunes it. And so
do you feel like with your children that changed you?
Yeah, you know what? Because my kids they're growing up, right? My son said this, oh my goodness, when he said this the other day, it broke my heart. He was talking to my wife and he says, he was just asking her a question. And he goes, he has a little monkey, a little red monkey, and he plays with it.
Like a real monkey?
Yes. No, a stuffed doll, okay. Right? And he says to my wife, he says, I speak to Hannah, my daughter, and she's busy, and I speak to Daddy, and he's on his phone. So I just go in my room and just play with the monkey, right? When I found it funny, just the wording, but to me, it made me like, man, he's playing in his room by himself. Because he feels that the other people in the house are occupied, and that's the kind of stuff where I'm seeing when I heard that, it's like I need to start making tweaks again. Yeah, because he's getting older. He's only 10, right? But he's going to get older and older and older, and I don't want to be him looking back and saying, my dad, yes, he was able to build this, and he was so busy, this and that, but he was, as a father, I didn't really get to do much with him because of that. I don't want that ever to happen. So being aware of that, it just kind of triggers me to be like, man, maybe I just need to, do something now or build this in or create that prime time element to avoid that. So that to me is my answer to how do I try to balance it? It's just being aware.
Also, I think, and this goes directly to your question, I don't think you're ever there. I don't think you ever get to a point where you're like, yeah, we got this.
Right.
Where you can be like, okay, it's on autopilot, because kids change.
Yeah.
Right? As they get, like, you kind of, once you think you got the hang of it, they hit puberty.
Right.
And then it's like, okay.
It's true.
Okay.
It's true.
Right? And then once they got the hang of it, then it's like, so who's that boy sending you notes, right? It's just, there's like phases. And it's so interesting because you learn to appreciate life in a totally different way.
Right.
Like I can say this. You don't appreciate your parents until you have kids, until you're around kids. And you're like, wow.
Right.
Like, just you start to realize like how tough it was for your parents, right?
I had that
it's
moment
always changing.
when my sister was pregnant, and my mom had come to town, and I was like, "You had 4 kids in 4 years?
That's crazy.
In your first year, you moved to Canada from a small village in India.
That's wild.
Yeah.
4 kids in 4 years.
Wow.
I can't even compute.
And they didn't speak the language.
No, nothing. And
Wow.
her family all lived in the motherland, so she was completely and utterly alone with a
In-
man
in
she had
Vernon-
an arranged marriage to.
In
so
Vernon, BC.
Wow.
Vernon, BC. She moved.
I'm just
Like, can
thinking
you-
like, just think about going to the hospital
Right.
Yeah.
for the delivery. Like,
Yes.
you don't you don't even know where to go in the hospital.
It's insane. So yeah, that there is a moment in how she was able to love and nourish my sister while she was pregnant, and then be a grandma.
Right.
And that moment where I was like, you're dope. Like,
Yeah.
forget, whatever you carry with you as childhood trauma, or, whatever, where you're like, oh, you didn't have enough time for me, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
There was a moment of reconciliation when I'm like, how the heck did you do that? Like, just and work and carry a home. And
Right.
I just don't get it. So I have so much appreciation for parents, mothers and fathers, My brother-in-law works so much, and like the twins' dad, and you could tell, like, you're just zonked because all of these responsibilities weigh on you. You're
Right.
all of these different things while you're still trying to like maintain a healthy brain yourself.
Yes.
And try to escape and go golfing whenever you can. Like, I don't know how the pressure must be for parents. And honestly, it's not something that I don't know if I want children, because I'm just like, I don't think I could do it. I
Yeah.
actually just straight up don't think I can handle that. Yeah.
Well, I don't think anybody thinks ahead of time that, like, yeah, I can handle it.
No.
I think that's actually the right approach,
Yeah.
right?
But I think you would be a good mom.
You know what? As you guys know, I love working
Yeah.
so much. So I actually, like, I'm a Cappy, so I feel like work in this kind of larger mission that I'd love to work towards
Yes.
occupies a lot of my faculties.
Yeah.
If that changes in the future, maybe.
You never know. You never
I
know.
do believe that I at some point would adopt,
Yes.
because there is this
Nice.
also other side of me that's like, there are kids out there that don't have parents. Like, you look at the crisis in Yemen or Syria, and I'm like, I don't think, the way I love the children, the twins, I genuinely feel like they're my own. And everyone says this. They're like, you don't know what love is until you have your own kids. And I'm like, and that's fine, because I feel like the biggest love I have
Yes.
is for the twins. And if I don't see something bigger,
Right.
I'm not losing anything.
Yes.
So I can see myself adopting at some point. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That speaks to your path, man.
Yeah.
Well, look, let me ask you this, just as we're nearing to the end here. Obviously, you don't have a website. So what I want to kind of throw out here is, if somebody wants the creatives of Raji, how do they find you? Okay.
I don't think they would, because they wouldn't know that I exist.
Okay. Do you want to be known?
I kind of am liking the current situation. I do
Okay, nice.
like it. Yeah, it's nice when we get a client come in. It's all hands on deck for that client, and it's okay as right now. But
Yes.
I mean, at some point, I have to go to a conference where there's gonna be like something like the 100 richest women in Canada in Victoria, BC in June, and they asked in the registration, "What's your company name and your title?" And I was like, "Damn!" And then like website and like
Yeah.
contact info, and I was like, I guess I gotta like grow up. Like, I gotta be a grown up now, and I should do that work. As it stands right now, there's nothing.
Well, look, at the end of the day, you're actually creating your path here right now, right? So if you can't be found, look.
Hit up Constantine.
Yeah, exactly. and then we'll do a background. Yeah. No, listen, that's awesome. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of what we do is not advertised. It's through referral as well. I mean, we do have a website, which is important for us.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
Yeah, Milka brought you into Spoke Club.
That's right.
Because she was a part of Nikki Beach.
Yes.
And then when I was at the apple orchard in Vernon, and Danish and I, Mongrel Media, we were like, what are we going to do for TIFF?
Right.
And we started developing the team, like
Yes.
our brain trust for
Yeah.
that. And right away I was like, oh, the guys from Spoke Club. And then Sentinel came in. Like,
Yeah.
like for you, I don't think you even need a website at this point.
right. No,
Yeah.
I mean, just the red tie, I guess, can be the signature brand. But
Well, it's the Constantine factor.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah,
one
yeah.
nameness of
Yeah.
you.
yeah. And we'll forget the last name for now.
Yeah.
But
Wait, how do you pronounce it?
Ioannou.
Ioannou.
Yeah, Ioannou, but it's spelled IOA, so people always like Ioannou, right? And which is like the way to kind of word it out.
Yeah.
However, it's a Cypriot origin name.
Yeah.
So, it's in
It's
uniqueness.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but what would you say coming up as we approach the months ahead? Is the next thing that's really occupying your time right now, where you're super excited?
I think officially we launched our business in, like, I had my consulting in 2015.
Yeah.
And then my partner and I came together and we're like, let's merge our agencies and
Yes.
create one big agency.
Right.
And I think over the summer months, I didn't schedule too many client work.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have TIFF at the end of
Yes.
the summer, like
Yes.
August, September. So those couple of months there are my own.
Okay.
And I can just do whatever I want with them. I can create.
Yes.
I can read. I'll
Yeah.
read
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
recommended books.
Nice.
That is actually what I'm looking most for.
Amazing. Listen.
Like a lot of my client work is going to wrap up by May,
Yes.
end of May. So literally end of May till most of June, I'll be in BC.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. I've never been to BC.
Never.
You have a contact now. Like
Yeah.
anytime, you should take the family. It's honestly, I mean, I don't get paid for this.
Yes.
Like
yeah.
I'm not working for the Ministry
the
of British
tourist board.
Columbia.
The tourist board of Vancouver.
But I
Yeah.
do feel like, you know, we spend so much time traveling out.
Yes.
Our
Yeah,
home is
it's
so
so true.
beautiful. Like BC is gorgeous.
You know, just to bring this full circle, you were talking about your reaction at the beginning when you fly into Toronto.
Yeah.
So if you were born and raised in Toronto and you fly out to Vancouver,
Yeah.
you have that same reaction in reverse where you're like, wow, this is what mountains look like.
Right.
And wait a minute, the mountains are like so close to the city?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the total in reverse, right? Where you're like, there's no tower here, but there's all these amazing mountains. And wait, I can drive there in like 2 hours?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
We were actually talking about this last week. Mike's in Newfoundland right now. He's filming there.
Right, yeah.
And he was telling me he's just blown away with how beautiful St. John's is. Like
Yeah.
he's like, holy smokes! Like,
And then Newfoundland is gorgeous.
Yeah,
I
and-
call that BC 2.0 because it's
Really?
like just a little
Really?
bit smaller, but it
Yeah.
has like the mountains.
yeah, yeah.
Water.
Have you been?
I've never been to the East Coast. Furthest I've gone is like Montreal.
Really? See,
Yeah.
that's.
I've
Okay,
been
you
I've been
guys
to
got to
BC.
take this to the road. And
Oh
go
my
that
goodness!
way.
Yeah, I'm telling you because it's what you just said right now is that we live in a beautiful country, and my mental programming is, okay, vacation means a beautiful beach in St. Lucia. That's a vacation to me, right?
You gotta get out to BC.
Yeah, but to me, so to me, I need to, and I've been given those opportunities to go out. I just have never gone to that. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that. I'm
Well,
definitely gonna do that.
I know in the summer, like my whole thing is like I want to create. Like I have some clients in BC, but I'd like to open an office out in British Columbia because I feel like that'll give me like free access. Like okay, I'm gonna go there for work. Like it just I have something there.
Nice.
More than my fam. So I always told you that you need to have Sentinel
Yes,
out in BC.
I
so
know, I
hopefully
know.
we can like do that in
Set
the future.
something up, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and to be honest, like we were thinking about bringing Mongrel Media to Vancouver International Film
Oh, wow.
Festival. So hopefully it's on the radar for us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
because
be amazing.
it's a nice reset. I feel
for
like
sure.
that proximity to nature, as you were describing it.
Yeah.
You come back and you do feel the benefits of like a beach in St. Lucia or
For sure.
Greece or wherever you go. It's just so different. One of the pivots in my life, and this is my last digression here. I remember being in Banff, the Banff Center for Creativity and Arts, or Arts and Creativity, and I felt the burden of being a settler on Indigenous lands,
Right.
on Canadian lands, right? And I don't know why I was feeling that, and I realized it was a culmination between Canada on 50 celebrations and
Yes.
the rooms, the conversations I had access to, and there was a leadership. There's a faculty of Indigenous leadership in Banff, and the women like Lexi that is a big part of that. She was like, go to the hot springs in the Banff Center, or like just outside the Banff Center. I went to the hot springs with this other woman, Erin Dixon, and literally she was like, our people believe that this is the water that's like hitting you, that it's very old, it's sacred. It's the water that fed the mountains. And I was like,
Wow.
what? And she's like, this is what our people believe.
Wow.
And just like the little gems
Yes.
that comes out of the mountain and the nature in BC and Alberta. I don't know, you come back to Canada, to Toronto,
Yeah.
and you just have a different appreciation for things.
No, for sure.
That moment just, and I'm looking at these massive mountains. I'm like, God, we're so small in comparison
Yeah.
to this.
Oh my goodness.
We have like
Yeah.
the Don River, and what's that feeding like?
Yeah, where
Who
does
knows,
that
right?
go?
It's feeding that condo or like
Yeah, exactly. Oh
Exactly.
my goodness.
So you got to go. And when you go, hit me up. I will hook you up
Okay.
with the best restaurants,
Oh,
bars, like
perfect.
everything. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Raji, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see the glimpse a little deeper of who you are as an individual and what you stand for and what you do. And I mean, 100%, 100%, we're gonna set that Vancouver. I need to explore. We need to see what else is out there.
For sure. And honestly, both of you, thank you for creating space for people like me. You know, I don't think I say yes to as many speaking engagements as I can, but it's because the space doesn't exist, and you're like, oh, what am I going to say? Do I have to educate you on like certain words? And
right.
Here, you guys are the ones that create space for real, authentic conversations, and it's really cool. So I love what you're doing. And
amazing.
Keep on,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Have a good one.
Listen to this episode on iTunes and Spotify. Make sure to drop by next week. And don't forget to subscribe.
Let's go!
It's time to give a shout out to our sponsors. This podcast is brought to you by Sentinel Security Plus. For all your premium security needs, visit SentinelSecurityPlus.com.
And The Substance Group for all your integrated marketing solutions. Visit TheSubstanceGroup.com.